Good morning, everybody. Apologies for the delay in being able to share this information with you this morning. Just wanted to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Jay Epton. I've actually been at Adobe for just under 2 years, and I'm responsible for the Adobe and Microsoft partnership, as well as the partner strategy for our enterprise business here at Adobe. Prior to Adobe, I was at Oracle for a short while, but also more significantly is that I was at Microsoft for 6 years and actually managed a wide portfolio of the Microsoft business. So I'm in a very fortuitous position to be able to not only talk about the partnership from an Adobe perspective and why it's unique, which we'll come back to, but also as importantly what it means to Microsoft and obviously to you, our customers. So thank you for joining us today. Bytes and myself are very happy to have you on the call with us today. Next slide, please, Tom. So let's talk about this partnership in a little bit more detail. Is it going to move over, Tom? Yes, there we go. Yeah, wonderful. Nice. So let's talk about this partnership in a little bit more detail. In essence, the partnership between Microsoft and Adobe has been probably in the form that we have today for around 4 or 5 years. And the idea of the partnership really is that if you look at Microsoft, there is nobody better in terms of creating productivity technologies. When you look at Office 365, you look at Microsoft Teams, maybe even look at SharePoint, right? But when you look at productivity, Microsoft really are the leaders in that space. And also, when we think about a cloud platform like Azure, that intelligent cloud offering is obviously very, very competitive. And we see lots of customers taking Azure and adopting that within their IT strategy. But just like, I suppose the analogy I would use, if you think about cars, car manufacturers are great at making cars, but they still outsource. The manufacture of tires to customers. They outsource the manufacture of tires to other companies, and also companies like Continental, Pirelli. They also outsource music systems to Bose, Sonos, Bang & Olufsen. So in other words, even though Microsoft are great at what they do, productivity, cloud platforms, there is still an element of technology that Adobe has and gives its customers today that Microsoft sees as a huge benefit to the customers using Microsoft. So when you think about our document and digitizing of documents and processes and workflows, we are the world leaders in that space. And so we came together 3 or 4 years ago really to help our customers get a single solution that obviously gives them the best in capability. And let's look at that in more detail. Next slide, please, Tom. So I suppose the first thing is that the reason why this partnership is so unique is that actually when you look at the shared vision and strategy, not only have we won awards from Microsoft, I'm not saying that means anything to you as a customer, but the reason we won those awards is actually because of the integration and the state-of-the-art capabilities that we offer today, which I'll go into in more detail. There's also another significance in the reason why this partnership is different to most of the Microsoft partnerships, in that Microsoft has what I would call marketing relationships with certain technology vendors. So if you're using a backup solution and you can back it up into Azure as one of your options, then there is a marketing relationship. There isn't necessarily a strong level of integration to what we're going to show you today, but there is some capabilities in terms of being able to deploy and store data within Azure. So this partnership is different in that Microsoft have invested $500 million, and so has Adobe. And what we've tried to do is make sure that not only do we work together from an executive and a marketing and a sales point of view, but we also work together from a technology point of view as well. So when we think about that shared application ecosystem, the idea being is that we want to be able to offer our customers, our customers, the ability to be able to integrate the Adobe and the Microsoft solutions easily. And I suppose when I think about printers, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we heard this slogan around plug and play. In other words, plugging in the USB cable into your laptop, it would automatically configure and then allow you to use that printer with little or no expertise or programming or configurating. And the same thing is happening with Adobe and Microsoft. And the thing that I'm about to talk about is actually looking at Microsoft Teams, and it's looking at Microsoft Dynamics and Microsoft Power Apps. So just be aware that whatever we're doing here, oh, somebody's not on mute. I don't know who's not on mute, Tom, just in case there's some background noise. So the idea being is whatever I talk about now, I'm going to talk about Adobe Sign and Microsoft Teams, but this could be Adobe Acrobat and Microsoft Teams. It could be Adobe Acrobat within Microsoft Word. It could be Adobe Sign within Microsoft Word. You get the idea. So I'm going to talk more around the Adobe Sign and Microsoft Teams elements. But in essence, included within your Adobe license, if you own any technology from Adobe today, with the latest versions, you automatically get the free of charge integration with Microsoft. So you may or may not realize, but you could actually switch this on today if you have Microsoft Teams and you have the latest versions of Adobe. And I'll go back to that in a little while. The other key thing is that not many people realize is that Microsoft Teams, for Microsoft, in 5 or 10 years' time, we as users won't be waking up in the morning and logging into Outlook. We'll be logging into Microsoft Teams. And the idea being is that Microsoft wants to ensure that there is the ability for customers not only to be able to use Teams as a collaboration tool that we're using it in the form of today, but also that you can drive applications, workflows, business logic. You can speed up the productivity. And to do that, Microsoft needs applications that stay and operate within the Microsoft Teams environment. And I'm very happy to say that Adobe Acrobat and Adobe Acrobat Sign are two solutions that are available today for that very purpose. A lot of our competitors are not at this same stage, or even if they say, well, we can do something similar, we could do a bit of professional services or programming and make it happen. The point is that obviously that defeats the object. It takes a lot of time and money to be able to do that. The other key thing is when you think about e-signature as an example, a lot of e-signature tools, including Adobe Sign, rely on emails to tell somebody that there's a contract there waiting to be signed. The intriguing thing is with email is that sometimes junk folders play a very bad part in not allowing emails through. But also alongside that, we do see people with very busy inboxes missing a request for a signature to be applied. And so we integrate with Teams approvals, which means, and again, I'll show you in a little while, that you can actually get a notification within Teams to say there's something waiting for you. And that red asterisk doesn't disappear until you've done the signature. We also offer something called Live Sign within Microsoft Teams. And Live Sign is where, as an example, we did this with a major high street bank in COVID, where you might want to interact with somebody, maybe for a loan. You may want to qualify them, whether they're capable of taking the loan out, do they have the sufficient credit scoring, etc. But then when you want to offer them the loan and they need to sign it, most banks will then turn to paper, postage, and petrol to get that document out to somebody, and likewise for somebody to sign that and return it back to the bank for it to be processed. We could drop an electronic contract into the chat within Teams, and that will allow customers to physically or digitally sign the document for it to be processed. And this could all be driven through Teams. So through Teams for you as a user, and then even as a consumer, I can use Teams within the web browser that's available free for anybody to utilize. So it's still possible for you to do this outside of your organization as much as inside. We also pre-integrate with Power Automate. And for those of you that may or may not know, Power Automate is an RPA, a robotic process automation tool that in essence, if I describe it in this way, it's probably easier than getting technical, but we could set something up within Power Automate to say, please check this Adobe PDF contract. Please check that all the signature fields have been completed. Please check that the date is correct, etc., etc. So you could do a pre-check of the document. You could download the document and save it in a certain file format. You could then decide to put that into SharePoint. You could then kick off a process within ServiceNow or within Workday or within another third-party application, Oracle as an example. So the idea being is that you're using technology where you might today be using people to manually do the input of data, manually check certain things, and manually kick off certain processes. And obviously, when you're using people, people need coffee breaks, people need holidays, people might get sick, people finish work at 6 o'clock. The idea being is that technology could run 24 hours a day, and you could reuse those people in those kind of roles to be more productive for you as an organization, maybe in some of the functions. And then the other area is around the shared investment and development. And I think that for me, it's another great thing that's available to our customers is that the middle column that I've just described to you is more around the user and the user experience. The column on the right is more around IT. So when you think about IT, what you don't want is another dashboard, another set of security criteria, having to train up on a particular technology to a point that you're taking 3 or 4 days out of the office, and obviously having to deal with a technology that could be high maintenance. The great news with Adobe Acrobat and Adobe Sign is that actually you can deliver these technologies using the Microsoft 365 Admin Console, which means that you've got a standard in terms of deployment and management. We automatically integrate with Azure Active Directory and all of the user rights that you apply. So in terms of being able to access certain folders, files, or information. And we also support single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. And what I would say is as well is that we also deliver Adobe Sign as an example on Microsoft Azure. So that means if you're creating your own version of Power Apps or you're looking to do some kind of API work, then the fact that we're running it on Azure means that it's as good as being sat in your server room next door. So the latency and the speed is obviously not an issue for you. Next click, please, Tom. And so for me, you know, when you look at this, when you bring Adobe and Microsoft together, what you're actually doing is offering your users the next phase or the next chapter of digital transformation. When I was at Microsoft and we were launching Microsoft Teams, you know, I didn't realize how big this platform was going to be, being honest, when it was released. I was using Skype and SharePoint and OneNote, but now obviously I use Teams in a lot of different ways. But I think the key thing is that now as users, we want more than just video, more than just chat. We want to be able to do more. And that's really where bringing the Adobe and the Microsoft technologies together, you're able to go to that next phase of digital transformation. But also you've got the ability to enhance the knowledge of the worker and their accuracy, again, using some of those technologies within Power Automate or even within Teams to make sure that users don't get distracted or distorted in terms of what they should be doing. And therefore, you can increase the capacity and the productivity in the workforce. And then another subject that's really close to my heart and something we'll touch on again today is around accessibility. So when you think about accessibility, accessibility is one of those things where it's user prescriptive. There might be somebody working in your organization that has maybe permanent accessibility needs in terms of color blindness, dyslexia, as an example. But there could be somebody in your organization that might have temporary needs. And so, for example, I play a lot of football. I've definitely been in goal a couple of times, tried to save a ball from going in and dislocated a finger. You know, I couldn't type for a few days. So I used some of the accessibility features within Microsoft and Adobe to be able to still complete my work without relying on maybe the dodgy digit. So just shows you that actually we can do a lot here to make things happen. Next click, please, Tom. So the way I want you to think about this Microsoft and Adobe partnership, and as I say, I put Adobe Sign here, but this could be Adobe Acrobat as well. But the idea being is that you will use, probably more than likely, the Microsoft applications in the circle around Adobe Sign or Adobe Acrobat. But the reality is that a lot of your business data could still reside in other locations. So even if you were to looking to, I don't know, create a new employment contract for all of your employees, you could actually do a bulk send within Adobe Sign. You could take a document that might have been in a Word template, as an example, and you could take data from Workday automatically and complete that contract and deliver it automatically. So you could go into Workday, look for the name, look for the address, look for the date of birth, look for the employment ID, and you could have all of that automatically furnished. And if anybody's as old as I am, you might remember the old days of mail merge within Word, where you had the ability to take data from an Excel and put it into a Word document and then generate documents on the back of that. This is a very more advanced, similar version of that, is being able to take data from different repositories, different applications, and put them into a document. And likewise, when that document comes back in, maybe signed, you could then kick off a process to do something else. So in this same example, once the new employment contract's been signed, we could then put a notification into Workday, either to place the contract into the Workday portal so that the employee's always got access to it, or indeed do some kind of flag or acknowledgement or notification within Workday to let the employee know that it's been received. So it just gives you a sense that when we're talking about e-signature and we're talking about PDFs, we're not just talking about viewing or signing. We're talking about actually how can we embellish and improve that that productivity capability in your organization today. Next slide, please, Tom. So this is an example. Even if you're not using Microsoft Teams today, I'm not sure there's many people out there that won't be, but even if you're not using Microsoft Teams today, even within Word, the integration is such that you could use your Adobe Sign and your Adobe Acrobat within your environment. So I've literally gone to insert within Word. I've gone down to Office add-ins. I've then done a search on Adobe, and then you can see all of the different Adobe applications that we could add into that Word environment. If you click next one for me, Tom, we can see the terms and conditions. So you just click on accept. Click again, please, Tom. This is the document that I basically want to send to somebody. I'd like to get a signature on it. I want to make sure that they're happy with everything that I've written, maybe, or it could be an acknowledgement from a customer to say they want me to do the work. If you click one more time for me, Tom, and what you can see here is that actually, even within Word, you could type in the email address for one or many recipients and send this document with a note, and they would receive an email. Or if they were using Microsoft Teams, they would receive a notification to say that actually Jay Epton is asking for you to sign a particular document. Okay, so this shows you even within Word, within Excel, within PowerPoint, within Outlook, it is possible for you to generate e-signature documents and documentation and to send them very, very easily. Next click, please, Tom. So let's take that a step further and let's look at our Microsoft Teams environment. And I'm just going to make a little a security statement, I suppose, really, for all of you, is that if you're not the IT leader within your organization, it could be that the App Store has been locked down by your organization. So if some of these things don't work in your Teams environment when you come to try this, I don't want you to do it right now. Please do it after the webinar. But if it doesn't work, then you might need to speak to IT just to get the application approved or I suppose, yeah, allowed to be downloaded. Some organizations prefer to lock everything down and therefore users can't break anything. But likewise, it could be that, as I say, that's happened in your organization. So just be sure to check that. So if it doesn't work, it's not because Adobe and Microsoft doesn't work. It's because your organization will have made some security decisions. So if we're in our Microsoft Teams environment, this is my environment, by the way. You can see all of my messages on the left-hand side. On the far left, we can see my navigation bar. If you do 1, 2, 3 clicks for me, please, Tom. So what I've done is I've gone down to the App Store. I've typed in Adobe. I've actually installed Adobe Acrobat Sign, and I've installed Adobe Acrobat. And you can see the icons on the left-hand navigation bar. Again, just to be clear, none of our competition can do anything like this in terms of, I think one of the leading e-signature solutions offers an icon, but when you click on the icon, it redirects you to a web browser and takes you out of Teams. So really, to an extent, it's something that you really need to think about when talking about productivity in Teams. Next click, please, Tom. So the next click shows you the real-time notifications. I mentioned earlier about Microsoft approvals, and what you can see here is that you would have the asterisk or the red marker that would appear top left-hand corner, but also it would sit there on your mobile device, and it doesn't go away until you've completed that process. So if you're OCD like me, in terms of wanting to get rid of those red bubbles, then obviously this is a great way for you to be able to deal with that and agree with that. Another click, please, Tom. So this view here is where I've clicked on the Acrobat icon or the Adobe Sign icon. This one in particular is around Adobe Sign. And what you can see here is that this is Adobe Sign within Microsoft Teams. And I can create, I can send, and I can sign documents within Microsoft Teams. If you can give me 3 clicks, please, Tom. And then the idea being is that you can see all of the documents that you've sent at the bottom of the slide. You can see the real-time status of where they are. You would, or you could, take your mouse over the recipient, and if it's not been completed in terms of signature, it would give you a little pop-up sort of window with a name to show you who the next person is in line to sign the document. And then you've got the reminders capability, and the reminders capability is pretty significant because you might have a document that you want signing today. Therefore, I'm going to set a reminder every hour. Now, that sounds a bit crazy, but that's possible to do. Likewise, it might be that I've got a document that needs completing this week. So can I have a reminder every day? But I don't want to disturb people on weekends because we're not an ogre as an employer. So we don't work weekends, and therefore I don't want to do reminders on weekends. So the idea being is that you can really be prescriptive with the reminders and obviously work through from there. One more click, please, Tom. And so for many of you, you'll have mobile devices, you'll have Microsoft Teams on those devices. And what you can see here, again, on my mobile device, is that I've got Microsoft Teams with Adobe Acrobat and Adobe Sign embedded within the application. So whatever I'm doing on the road, in the evening, on holiday, not recommending that one, but whatever I'm doing on the mobile device is automatically reflected in my desktop and real-time environment. And again, for everybody else, not forgetting, of course, Teams means that you could have a whole department dedicated to maybe document signatures, and therefore there needs to be real-time updates for everybody. Next click, please, Tom. So this is the view of Adobe Acrobat. And what you can see here, you can see that you've got the PDF, you've got the ability to annotate documents, you've got the ability to anything that you do with Acrobat today, you have the ability to do within Teams. Likewise, when I mentioned earlier about APIs and going into third-party applications and bringing information into a PDF to build a PDF, that's all possible within the Teams environment. Next click, please, Tom. We also integrate with the Microsoft Teams bot. And so as an example, let's imagine that Tom and I work in the same HR department. You have a request with me to maybe get a signature for an employee that you want to join the organization. Unfortunately, Jay's on holiday again, always typical. So in essence, Tom could be contacted by the bot, or you could contact him via Teams. And literally, he could go to the bot and say, show me documents for Jay Epton. Now, again, coming back to the security is supported via Active Directory, etc. So we have the ability to be able to obviously control who can see what. But in this case, let's imagine Tom's got security rights. Show me documents for Jay Epton. Tom would then get a list of all the documents that I'm working on that are outstanding, and he could then make a decision whether he sets a reminder to the next person in line to say, look, this document really needs signing, please sign it. Or likewise, he could download that document and restart the process if he wanted to. So the idea being is that the bot is driving collaboration, it's preventing people from contacting me on holiday, and it means that I'm not the failure, okay? We also have accessibility. So hopefully all of you are aware, I'm a massive fan of accessibility. And I think this is something that a lot of people associate with, maybe people with dyslexia or color blindness or maybe even further needs. I think the other key thing is that remember, as employees age, and I'm saying this from personal experience, as employees age, we will require accessibility. We will require the increased size of fonts. You know, how many people have you seen where you've looked over their shoulder accidentally and seen that their font on their mobile phone is 15 times the normal size? Because people are struggling to read because their accessibility needs around sight, around hearing, maybe it's physical accessibility needs. But the point is that we can use technology to really support and help each user. And the key thing is that you can allow each user to decide what accessibility they want to use from a technology perspective when they want it. And that's the real key thing for me. So what we've got here is, again, my Microsoft Teams environment. There's a message that I've received from Hector. And ironically, maybe my eyesight's not so good today. I could use the immersive reader. So I click on immersive reader. Tom, next click, please. And what you can see here is this is actually a colorblind version of a screen. So we've got a purple background with a black font. But what you'll also notice is that we have the dots, in between certain words, which means that we can see as a dyslexic view, it allows somebody to be able to read that and break the words down. But also, my brother suffers with dyslexia, and he talks about the fact that words float around the screen for him when there's lots of words. So next click, please, Tom. So within Teams, you have the ability to do what's called a ruler view. And the ruler view allows you to obviously see things line by line. On the right-hand side, you can also see there's the ability to use, if you will, a translator. So within the Translate drop-down menu, you can see that you could use Italian, Spanish, German, Swedish, Urdu, whatever language is your preferred language. And there are people, obviously, that we employ today where English may not be their first language. So this is of great use to them as well. Next click, please, Tom. And what you can see here is that we've got the ability not only to click on a word that we don't recognize, not only can we have it read out loud by Microsoft Teams, but we can also see the word in Italian, and we can also get it read out loud in Italian as well. So that just shows you the kind of power of productivity around accessibility. So let's talk a little bit more about Adobe. Next click, please, Tom. And so what we've got here is Adobe Acrobat within Microsoft Teams. And what you can see here is that, number one, we've changed the background color. Now, I probably could have gone for something a little bit more adventurous, but, you know, to my mind, and I don't know why I never really thought about it this way, I suppose because I don't have color blindness, is that I never realized that color blindness wasn't the same version for everybody. So therefore, color blindness is about selecting the appropriate colors in the background and as a font that resonate with your site. And that's what Adobe allows you to do. You can also change the type of font. You can change the size of font. We also do what's called liquid mode. So whether this is on a laptop or, more importantly, if it's on a mobile device, it's about that when you zoom in to read some text and maybe zoom in to view it better, is that Adobe liquid mode means that you don't lose the quality of that pixel. So there's no pixelation. You know, if you're zooming in, you're maximizing the space of the screen, and therefore somebody with site accessibility needs has the ability to read that document efficiently and proficiently. Okay, next click, please, Tom. The other key thing about accessibility, and this might be something that your organization is thinking about today, is that it's great going out and installing maybe the latest version of Adobe Acrobat, which will create PDFs to be tagged automatically for accessibility readers, you know, to ensure that it meets all the accessibility criteria that a lot of organizations are striving for today. The challenge, of course, is that there will be documents, not necessarily that you create with Adobe. You might have created it with a competitor of ours, with maybe even with ilovepdf.com, that could still be in existence today. So one of the things that you can do with Bytes is that we could actually use something called a PDF checker. And a PDF checker will actually do whether we target your website or whether we target within your organization. We can do a search of all of the PDFs that are in production and available for people to utilize. Now, a couple of key things. Number one is that a lot of older versions of PDFs are insecure. So therefore, they could be hacked. They could be changed. You could find people changing information that could affect your brand and your share price. They could be affecting information that may mislead your customers. So from that perspective, it's really important that your PDFs are secure. The second thing is it will also tell you whether that PDF is accessible or has accessibility tagging. If it doesn't, and obviously that's something that you are keen to do, I know that in the public sector and in the financial services arenas, certainly within the next 18 months, there is going to be some strong regulation around accessibility. This is going to be a headache for a lot of people. So the idea being is that the PDF checker is something that you can work with Bytes, we can make available and deploy it, as I say, either at your website or within your organization to tell you all of the PDFs in production, all of the PDFs that are insecure, all of the PDFs that aren't accessible. Now, even with the ones that aren't accessible, and I know organizations that use hundreds and thousands of PDFs, we actually have the ability using the PDF Services API, and that's the middle section on this slide, where we can actually automatically go to every single PDF document within your organization, and we can basically deconstruct it, rebuild it so that it is secure, rebuild it so that it has accessibility tagging. And believe it or not, it might sound like an expensive exercise, but you would not be, well, you would be surprised that actually it's not as expensive as you imagine. And so, you know, this is something that rather than doing it manually, rather than asking IT to do it, rather than outsourcing it, it is something that actually you can do in partnership with Bytes and Adobe. Next click, please, Tom. So final slide on accessibility, but we'll be sharing the content from this session with Bytes today. And this will be made available to you. And we actually did a event back in October, and we actually had Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, as their lead presenter. But interestingly, we also did a 20-minute fireside chat with Hector Minto. And Hector Minto is somebody that's been at Microsoft for a very long time. He's not only responsible for accessibility from a Microsoft perspective, but he also is an ambassador for the UK government. And we had a fireside chat around how technology can accelerate accessibility within your organization. So certainly something for you to think about. The other key thing for me as well is that a lot of organizations see accessibility as a bit of a taboo. So it's almost like, well, if we don't try and do anything, we can't get anything wrong. And I think that's not necessarily the way I would view it. I would definitely look at technology as your first step, you know, in terms of, you know, just by switching certain options on, by integrating products like Adobe and Microsoft, then actually you can improve the accessibility experience for anybody that requires it. And obviously with all the options within both technologies from Microsoft and Adobe, the user could actually be more productive and enjoy their work a lot more as well. Next slide, please, Tom. So my challenge to you as an organization is to think about where you're using Microsoft Teams today. Also thinking about where are you using paper and or manual processes. Is there a way that we can digitize them? And there are ways that we can digitize them. So for example, any paper-based documentation that you have, we could scan, we could use OCR, and we could turn that into an Adobe Acrobat document that could well be distributed using Teams within your organization. Bearing in mind that there is a frontline version of Microsoft Teams available as well, which means that anybody that maybe works on a factory floor or in production or in manufacturing or maybe is out on the road, the idea being is obviously they still got the ability to see those views in a, I suppose, stripped down version of Teams, for want of a better description. But the point is that you will, and I'm not even going to say that you will have paper-based and manual-based processes that could be digitized and brought within the Teams environment. Not only are you helping it from a sustainability point of view, but you're also helping from an accessibility point of view. And even if those two things don't resonate with your organization today, when you think of the cost of paper, printing, petrol, postage, I guarantee you that digitizing and using e-signatures is definitely the way forwards and will save you a vast amount of money, as well as possibly giving you a competitive edge, which we saw with the high street bank that I mentioned earlier on today. Next slide, please, Tom. So there are some case studies that we'll send in the slides afterwards. And what you'll notice about these case studies, number one, they're not just Adobe case studies. They are Adobe and Microsoft case studies. They are case studies where Microsoft and Adobe have worked together to really help and meet the needs of the customer. The first one is TSB, obviously High Street Bank, Lookers, a car retailer, Norfolk County Council, so one around public sector, and Galliford Try around construction. And the use of construction equipment. So you can see that actually in each of those cases, not only did we benefit the customer in terms of the technology that we offer from Adobe, but actually they used it and enhanced that experience using Microsoft and Adobe together as well. I think the key thing for me is also that not only are we operating together as organizations from a technology point of view, but actually if you're working with anybody within Microsoft UK today, then it's highly likely that we would have a relationship and an interaction with that person. So if you have any dedicated account management from Microsoft or any dedicated CSM resources from Microsoft, then there's a good chance that we would be aligning. We can help you drive even more transformation within your business. Next slide, please, Tom. Oh, click. It's okay. That's fine. I forgot this one was in, but it's more around our licensing. Next click, please, Tom. Okay, so I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody for listening to the presentation. Apologies for the technical issues earlier on as we tried to get things up and running. Do we have any questions, Tom?
There's been a couple of questions in the group, but I've answered a couple of them already, to be fair. But I think, you know, I think just feel free, obviously, to, following this call, put any questions towards myself, Bytes, obviously your account managers as well. Align direct to you to Bytes, and as you can see potentially in the Teams call now that Catherine has launched a few polls, so you feel free to respond to those, and yeah, we look forward to speaking to you about the presentation again.
Thank you, everybody. I think there was a question, by the way, Tom, with regards to whether you could see the case study for Norfolk County Council. So just so everybody's aware, we do have those use cases on the Adobe site. So even if you typed into Google Norfolk County Council and Adobe, then you'll find that actually you could get access to that very, very quickly. Likewise, feel free to contact your Bytes account manager. We'll be more than happy to obviously share that information with you that way as well.